In a single afternoon, a man named Job loses everything: his animals, his servants, and then, in one more sentence, all 10 of his children. He's done nothing wrong. The Bible goes out of its way to say so. It calls him the most blameless man alive. And here's what he never finds out. There is a reason. It's unfolding in a room he isn't allowed to see. A conversation in heaven about him. You're about to see that room. Job never will. And that gap between what we get to watch and what he had to live through blind turns out to be the whole point of the oldest book in the Bible.
His name is Job, and the Bible introduces him with a word it almost never uses for anyone. It calls him blameless, a man who feared God and turned away from evil. He has a big family, more wealth than he can count, and a quiet, ordinary happiness. He is, by every measure we have, a good man whose life is going well. And then the camera does something it almost never does. It pulls back from earth and shows us a room we were never supposed to see. It's a throne room, a heavenly court. And among those who come to stand before God, there's an accuser. In Hebrew, the Satan, the adversary. God points to Job, this blameless man, almost with pride. And the accuser answers with a question. A small, poisonous question that the entire book is about to hang on. Does Job fear God for no reason? In other words, of course Job loves you. Look what you've given him. He doesn't love you. He loves the paycheck. Take it all away and watch how fast the worship turns to cursing. It's a dare, and God allows it.
What happens next happens fast. In a single afternoon, the messengers arrive, one on top of another, each one outrunning the last. The oxen and donkeys gone, raided. The sheep burned up. The camels stolen. The servants killed. And then the last messenger, the one that empties the room of air. His sons and daughters, all of them, all at once, dead. Everything. In an afternoon. And here is the moment the accuser was betting against. Job stands up and tears his robe and falls to the ground. Not to curse, but to worship. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Then it gets worse. The test deepens, and now it's his own body, covered head to foot in painful sores. He sits down in the ashes and scrapes at his skin with a piece of broken pottery. His wife looks at the wreckage of their life and says the only sane thing left to say: curse God and die. And still he holds on. But notice something the story is doing very deliberately. Job never finds out about the conversation in heaven. He doesn't get to see the throne room. He will go through every single page that follows without ever learning why. Just like you.
Then his friends arrive, 3 of them, and the first thing they do is the best thing they do. They sit with him on the ground in silence for 7 days because his suffering is too great for words. And then they open their mouths, and it all falls apart. Because his friends have a theory about how the world works, and it's a tidy one. The world, they're sure, is fair. Good people prosper, bad people suffer. Suffering is the receipt that proves you've sinned. So the logic is brutal and simple. Job, look at the size of your suffering. Think what it says about the size of your secret sin. Confess it, repent, and God will set the scales right again. It sounds reasonable. It even sounds religious. And it is everywhere, still today. Every time we whisper, what goes around comes around, every time we hear everything happens for a reason, it's the oldest theology there is. And here, aimed at a blameless man buried in grief, it is exposed for what it is: a lie, and a cruel one.
And Job will not take it. He won't confess to sins he didn't commit. He won't tell lies about God just to make his friends' math add up. So he does something that should shock us more than it does. He gets angry. He argues. He accuses heaven of being unfair. He demands a hearing, a day in court, a chance to put God on the witness stand and ask, to his face, why? But listen closely, because in the middle of all that rage, something breaks through that he could not possibly have reasoned his way to. 2 impossible hopes. First, he cries out for someone to stand between him and God, an arbiter, he says, who might lay his hand on us both. And then, from the very bottom of the ash heap, this:
For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth.
A man who has lost everything, scraping his sores with a shard of pottery, suddenly reaches into the dark and grabs hold of a person he cannot see, someone who will buy him back, someone who will make it right, even past the edge of death itself. Hold on to that. He's reaching for someone who isn't there yet.
And then, finally, after 37 chapters of arguing, God answers. He comes in a storm, a whirlwind, and everyone leans in because now we're going to get it. Now we'll find out about the throne room, the accuser, the wager. Now Job gets his explanation. Except he doesn't. Instead, God answers a question with a question. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? And then he just keeps going. He asks Job about the morning stars and the doors of the sea, about where light lives and where the snow is kept, about the wild donkey that answers to no one, the ostrich that forgot to be wise, the war horse that laughs at fear, about a creature called Leviathan that no man can tame. Question after question after question, and not one of them is about Job's suffering. God never defends himself. He never explains. He simply takes Job by the hand and walks him out of his tiny courtroom and into a universe so vast and wild and strangely good that the question Job came to ask quietly loses its grip.
So why no answer? Why would God refuse to explain the one thing the whole book is screaming about? Because the book was never really asking that question. Go all the way back to the throne room, to the accuser's dare. Does Job fear God for no reason? That's the real question. Not why do good people suffer, but is God himself worth loving when the gifts are gone? The accuser's claim was that no one actually loves God. We love his stuff. We love the safety and the paycheck and the good life, and we call it worship. Strip all of that away, he says, and there's nothing underneath. The whole story is a test of whether love for God can survive in the dark. And out in the whirlwind, Job finds the answer, but not the one he was demanding. He never gets his explanation. He gets something else. He gets God. And it turns out that's what he was actually starving for the whole time. Listen to how he says it. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. He came for answers. He got a presence. And the presence was enough. Then comes the twist almost nobody notices. When it's all over, God turns to the three friends, the ones who defended him so confidently with all their tidy theology, and tells them they were wrong. And the one who got it right? The angry man in the ashes, who refused to stop wrestling. It turns out God can handle your honest fury far better than he can stomach a polished lie told in his defense. Now, remember what Job was reaching for in the dark. An arbiter to stand between him and God, a redeemer to buy him back from death, a blameless man who could somehow bridge the distance. He was reaching for someone who wasn't there yet. Centuries later, that someone came, a man the Bible also calls blameless, the only one who ever truly was, a man who really did suffer for no fault of his own, who was really accused, really abandoned, really crushed for no reason that lay in him. And on a Roman cross, the accuser's ancient question finally got its answer, forever. Does anyone fear God for no reason? Yes. Here is a man who loves and trusts his Father in total darkness, with every gift stripped away, all the way down into death, and does not let go. That's the answer Job never got and never needed, because God's final response to human suffering was never going to be a sentence. It was a son climbing down into the ash heap with us. When Job said, I know that my Redeemer lives, he had no idea how literally it would come true, that his Redeemer would one day lie down in an ash heap of his own, in a borrowed grave, and then stand up and walk out of it. Which brings us all the way back to the bedside, the funeral, the phone call you didn't want to answer. The book of Job does two things for you there, and they're both gifts. First, it tears up the cruel sentence. Your suffering is not a receipt for your sin. The cancer, the layoff, the loss, stop reading your pain as a verdict on your life. That math was a lie when Job's friends used it, and it's a lie when you use it on yourself at 3 a.m. But second, and this is the harder gift, it refuses to hand you a tidy reason in its place. Job didn't get one. You probably won't either. What you get instead is permission. Permission to grieve out loud, to be angry, to say, I don't understand, and not be struck down for it. And underneath the permission, a presence. One who isn't explaining the dark from a safe distance, but who has been all the way down inside it himself and come back. You were never promised an explanation. You were promised a Redeemer who lives. That's why the oldest book in the Bible refuses to answer the oldest question, not because there's no answer, but because the answer was never going to be a reason. It was always going to be a person, a holy God you can trust in the dark, a grief he lets you speak out loud, and a Redeemer who climbed into the worst of it so that even there, especially there, you are not alone. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. If this opened the book up for you, take some time this week and read Job 38 through 42 slowly, out loud if you can. Sit in the whirlwind for a few minutes and let it do its work. And if you want more videos walking through the scriptures like this, subscribe, and we'll keep going, one book at a time.